Hello everyone, I welcome you to yet another session with NLTI where we are familiarizing you with the very basic concepts which are necessary for this paper, which is NLSAT. And today's session is going to be about managing the time in part B. In one of the previous sessions, I have discussed with you how you can go about managing your time in part A and how important in this paper it is to manage your time judiciously. Because a lot is dependent on how well you're able to manage your time in and around part A and part B. Because while the paper itself may not be very difficult, the way in which you deal with these questions and how do you go about managing your time overall makes a huge difference. About majority of the people who clear this exam are people who have been able to finish this part or who have been able to finish this paper in its entirety. So many a times the key differentiator between a student who clears the paper and who doesn't is how much they're able to manage their time and if they're even able to finish the paper. So while we have discussed how to manage time in part A, this session is going to be about how we manage time in part B. Now, first is that ideally, how long should it take for you to first finish your part B? I think that's the first doubt that many students have. I would suggest that anywhere between 70 to 90 minutes is what you should aim to finish your part B within. The reason to keep such a broad range of about 70 to 90 minutes is so that you're able to factor into your writing speed and other things as well. Because while some of you who write fast can very easily write just as much content in 70 minutes, the other ones might take slightly longer time to write just as much content. So you might take 90 minutes. I, for one, when I gave this exam, it took me about 85 minutes to finish my part B. So certainly, as you're preparing, you must have an idea of roughly how long does it take for you to finish your part B. But anywhere, ideally, your extent of time you should take to finish your part B, I think the ideal range should be somewhere between 70 to 80 minutes, because this leaves you with ample time to finish your part A as well. So that's why I would suggest that try to finish your part B within 70 to 80 minutes. And this is more than enough to also write quality answers in part B. Now, let's have a bit of discussion on how you can manage your time. So let's say on an ideal, you have 70 minutes, okay, to finish your part B. In those 70 minutes, we have 5 questions plus one essay that we need to manage our time between. So let's say about for every 5 questions, we will have about, let's just say in this case, we'll allocate about 10 to 12 minutes, okay? That'll bring us roughly, if we calculate it all up, between 50 to 60 minutes, we'll have to finish our all the 5 questions, plus there is an essay as well, okay? Now, I would say that take about, as is written over here, I would say that take about not 3 to 4 minutes, but perhaps 2 to 3 minutes on reading and analyzing your question, okay? So you can take about 2 minutes, and that's more than enough, actually, 2 minutes to read your question and to see what the question is asking you to do. Then take about another minute to plan and outline what you want to write. Now, this is a very important step, okay? The reading part is certainly important, wherein you will be absorbing the information which is given to you in the question. But the part where you're planning how you want to go about the answer is the most important one. It does a few things for you. It introduces clarity to your answer. It'll also ensure that you know exactly what you're going to write in your answer. And it'll also ensure that there is a good structure in your answer. So while you've taken 2 minutes for reading and analysis, take about a minute to plan it. So then you have about 3 minutes that you have spent in just basically preparing a mental map of your answer and also having thought of what you're going to write in your answer. After that, all the time which is left, which will, let's say, about 7 minutes, you write your answer. And I think 7 minutes is more than enough for you to be able to write an answer of about 200 to 250 words. Now, if you feel that you're not able to write your answer within 7 minutes, maybe it's okay to take an extra minute to finish your answer, but generally try to finish it. And while if you're somebody who's struggling to do that, I would highly recommend that you time yourself, you take up any part B question and then you write an answer to it and put yourself in a position where you're not taking more than 7 minutes to finish writing. But in any case, do not compromise with these 3 minutes because they are very important. In these 3 minutes, you're thinking about what you want to write. You're thinking about the question. You're looking at what all are the relevant facts and information that you want to take out of that question to write your answer. So that's roughly how the mental map of this looks like. As you will observe, we have kept it 10 to 12 minutes because there has to be a 2 minutes buffer time. any student who is preparing for a competitive exam, you cannot keep a very rigid time limit. You cannot say that I'll only take 10 minutes. Maybe in some of your mock tests, you'll only take 8 minutes to finish writing an answer. But maybe there are some contingency times where you'll find a question which is too difficult and it takes you an extra few minutes. So that's why you can keep those 2 minutes as reserve time. So that will be your buffer time which you can take to perhaps allocate some extra time in case it's a difficult question or in case it's a question which requires more attention. So that's why this is how our time division will look like. No need to do a quick review. We can skip this step. Perhaps earlier when there was more time to attempt, this could have been helpful. But I wouldn't suggest that you do a quick review. It's anyway not going to help. It's not that you'll be able to change anything about your answer. So no need to I would say, revise your answer or to go through your answer once again once you're done writing. Once you're done writing, move on to the next question. So this is how on an average your time division should look like. So instead of 12 to 14 minutes, read it as 10 to 12 minutes that you can give to every answer. Then that leaves us with the essay. I think you'll have about anywhere between 10 to 20 minutes to finish your essay, which again is sufficient time to finish your essay writing. Because if you're aiming to finish every question within 10 minutes, which will come down to a total of 50 minutes, most students don't finish within 50 minutes because in the exam you have pressure, you have other externalities which come into picture. So maybe you will take about 55 to 57 minutes and then whatever time is left you dedicate it to the essay. Now one tip I want to give to people which is specifically about essay is that sometimes students will give, let's say, about 10 minutes or 12 minutes to every question and they'll reserve about 20 minutes for the essay. I don't think you need to keep out a very large chunk of time for your essay. Of course, every question will have 12 marks and the essay will have 15 marks. So the difference between essay and a single question is not huge. So if you're giving about 10 to 12 minutes to every question, you can also give the same amount of time to an essay. Do not think that because essay is 15 markers, so I'll give 20 minutes to the essay. I've seen that many a times students end up compromising on the quality of their 5 logical reasoning answers because they wanted to save extra time for essay. I would highly suggest that if you're giving 12 minutes to every question, give about same amount of time to the essay as well. It's not, at least from a marks point of view, it's not very different from your general answers. So treat your essay like any other logical reasoning question and allocate it at the same amount of time, because I have seen many students generally spend more time in writing essay. In my opinion, it's not very useful because you'll end up having the same number of marks. In essay, there are only 3 marks extra than your average logical reasoning question. So strategically, it's not very useful to save up a large chunk of time. Anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes is sufficient to write an essay. Now, this is one of the most important advice. It seems very simple, but it's very important. Have an equal division of time between questions, all right? Do not put all your effort on just a few questions. Focus on spacing out equal time among all questions. What it basically means is that, and as I've written here, is that when people start attempting their part B, on the first 2 questions or in the first question itself, if they'll end up spending the most time on, because they feel that they can write as much as they want to, or they want to write as much as possible because that will help them fetch extra marks. And what ends up happening is that, let's say in the first 2 questions you spent 30 minutes. Let's say you have a total of 50 minutes to finish your 5 logical reasoning questions. So for the next 3 questions, you will only have 20 minutes. Which means that while you might have tried to write 2 good answers or 2 quality answers, you'll end up writing 3 bad answers because you only had 20 minutes to finish writing them. As a result, while you might have thought that I wanted to write great answers, the temptation of writing 2 great answers is that you end up writing 3 bad answers, and that will lower your overall score. So when you're writing your part B answer, do not think too much from a quality point of view, as in that I'll try to write the best possible answers. Focus on how you can write 5 good answers or 5 reasonably good answers. So if, let's say, the marker is that you're writing an excellent answer or a great answer and a good answer, most people will be tempted to think that if I write 2 excellent answers and after good, let's say that there is an average answer and there is a bad answer. Trust me, when you write, or if you think that you're writing 2 excellent or great answers, the rest of the 3 questions will end up being bad and average. So on an average, the student loses out on more number of marks. I would suggest if you can write 5 good answers, and this is genuinely will be more critical for you to clear this paper. So instead of swinging between either great answer or bad answer, try to be somewhere here where you're writing reasonably good answers which will help you space out better marks. That's why if let's say there are 5 questions, try to spend equal amount of time. If you have decided that I'll only spend 12 minutes, precisely when 12 minutes are over, if you're timing yourself, stop writing that answer. Do not write anymore, even if you think that you have more things to write. It makes very little difference if you spend those extra few minutes to write some extra words in your answer, because having checked a lot of sheets myself, I do not think that it makes a lot of difference when students spend extra few minutes in adding more content to their answer. So that's why my suggestion is that fix or yourself to a certain time limit, and once the time is over, move on to the next question. Do not spend those extra few minutes making that one answer look excellent, while that comes at the cost of average and bad answers for the rest of the questions. Now, this is generally how you quickly go through your question in the part B. For legal scenarios or generally fact scenarios, immediately identify who are the parties involved, relevant rules or issues, timeline of events, the specific decision you need to make. So this is all part of reading a question. So when you're reading a question, you have to identify who are the parties, what are the issues, how have the things unfolded, and what specifically you need to do in that question. Which means that you need to have a mental template. So what it will look like is basically brief facts of the situation, key issues, legal principles or general principles which are involved, and the decision with the reasoning. Do not waste time on elaborate introductions or conclusions. The reason this is important is because many students will end up writing about 4 to 5 lines of introduction. Absolutely unnecessary. You can write your introduction in just 1 line where you will state what your position is. So do not waste too much time on writing a long introduction. Similarly, do not waste your time on writing a long conclusion. You can finish your introduction and conclusion in 1 line each, and then focus the rest of your answer writing on things like identifying the key issues, identifying the principles involved in that, and how you have come to reason those principles out. So decision with reasoning plus how you have identified the principles and issues is way more important. That is the body of your answer, and that should take the majority of your time. So please do not take too much time in introduction and conclusions. These are some key time saver tips for you. Write in clear and direct sentences. Avoid flowery language or repetitive explanations. Many students think that if I write long, that'll get me many marks. Maybe it's true in some cases, but if you're doing it at the cost of engaging in writing some flowery language or repetitive explanations, that's a clear sign of wasting time. So do not do that. It'll waste a lot of your time. Get straight to the reasoning part. Avoid this legal. Get straight to reasoning. Do not rewrite facts extensively. Focus on analysis. One of the key reasons why students waste their time, besides the reasons such as writing in extremely flowery language, because they think too much of what I should write. And other than that, one of the other reasons why students waste too much of their time is because they end up rewriting the facts. Once you start writing your answer, do not rewrite the facts. Maybe if you're explaining some argument, for that purposes, if you want to rewrite a fact as an evidence to support your claim, then you can do that. But most of the times, if you're rewriting the facts in order to give a summary of what the question is asking you to do, don't do that, okay? So when you're starting to write an answer, many students tend to rewrite the whole facts. That you should avoid doing. You can rewrite certain relevant excerpts or certain relevant facts from the question to explain your argument. That is all fine, but do not engage or do not rewrite facts in its entirety to just fill up your sheet. That is something which will waste your time. So that's why focus mostly on analysis. Make your decision early in the response. Very important. Most students, when they're thinking about what to write, they take up a significant amount of their time in thinking which side should I take. My honest advice is that most of these questions are very well balanced. So once you're reading the question, do not take too much time on thinking which side should I really argue for, because both sides will have a significant number of arguments that you can make. So it's really not really worth in engaging in thinking what side should I take. Whichever side you have taken, you'll have sufficient material to write on. So in your early answer writing practice, do not take too much time on deciding which side I need to argue for. Make that decision as quickly as possible, because you will have enough content to write in whichever side's favor you have decided. Support 2 to 3 strong reasons rather than many weak ones. This is basically to say that do not engage in writing 4 or 5 arguments. Maybe have 2 arguments or 3 arguments at maximum. So try to have maybe generally 2 good arguments. That is more than enough, as opposed to having 5 average arguments. So it's very important that you focus on limiting yourself to content which is actually backed by good explanation and analysis, as opposed to coming up with many arguments. As I said, skip elaborate introductions and conclusions. Your reasoning should speak for itself. Now, I hope the session was helpful for understanding how to manage time for the part B, and the most important tips that I've just discussed with you are covered in this session. So stay tuned for the rest of the sessions, and I hope this was helpful. Thank you.